So your best rendition of Purple Rain.
Okay. All right, so we got a really good panel, and I just kind of went through our Rolodex of investor friends, and I figured these guys are good to kind of like pick their brains and figure out where they're investing. And what we're going to do, my buddy up here, David, just wrote a killer book. Actually, my mom that knows nothing about real estate, she's like, I could actually understand this book, and she was super excited and complimented the book completely. So we're going to raffle off a signed copy of this book. But how are we going to do? What's the easiest way to do the raffle? Okay, everybody who wants to participate in the raffle, give Cynthia Sandoval over there a business card, and then we'll put it in Tom's Remington hat.
If you don't have one, then I'll give you a piece of paper.
And then we'll play credit card roulette after that. Just kidding. So we're gonna. The book is called, and it's called Long Distance Real Estate Investing by David Green. How to buy, rehab, and manage out-of-state rental properties. And then, oh look, he got Hal Elrod. Does anybody know Miracle Morning here? Yeah. Hal Elrod. If you want to experience financial success in the future, you should start preparing now. This book will show you just how to do that exactly. Wow. I mean, you get Hal Elrod to write something on your book. That's pretty good. This was produced with Bigger Pockets, and I guess I'll just start introducing you. And David is a former police officer that turned into a top producing real estate agent while investing in real estate. Now he owns lots of properties in multiple markets: Arkansas, Arizona, Texas, Florida. Texas? No. Florida. So that's a great book, just to give you his kind of strategy. He calls it the Core Four, which he'll probably talk about a little bit. And then we got Ray. How do I say your last name? Gockhart. And your day job?
Director of Technology for a bank.
I'm going to let you.
Sure. And I invest out of state. I have a bunch of stuff in California as well, but I also invest out of state, mostly in Indianapolis, and have built a pretty nice portfolio over the last 3-4 years out in Indianapolis. So we'll talk more about that.
My name is Ryan McCaskey. I also invest out of state. Ray and I actually have been partnering on a few things together and looking at a lot of different opportunities. But right now, I've got some property in Chicago, see me afterwards, and in Indianapolis. I've mostly been focusing in Indianapolis on fix and flips, buy and hold, short-term rentals.
I'll let you continue.
Yes. And now we have Aaron. I've met Aaron a few years ago. I saw him with his, he owns a concrete company, so obviously he has a competitive advantage, right, because he specializes in foundation, but he's done a lot of flips in the Bay Area, a former Brazilian Olympic athlete, not jiu-jitsu, but running.
Yeah, but I can.
Yeah, he can also, he's also one of those Brazilian jiu-jitsu guys. No, I'm just, so his construction company, if you guys ever need concrete work, is called Concrete Solutions, and he's local here. And then I don't know much about, but he's bought quite a few out-of-state rental properties, and he's doing that more of a passive because his concrete business is very successful. He's done very well with his residential redevelopment business, and I figured we need to kind of get the gamut of like, you know, what the normal Joes are doing and how they became very successful, right? And one thing is I know about him is work ethic. You know, he's a guy that, you know, came from nothing and became very successful. Now drives a sick car, you know, but he's very humble. But every time I see it, I just have to compliment his car because it's really cool. You'll have to see it. You know, if you follow him on Facebook, you'll see it once in a while. But anyway, so I think we really kind of got a good establishment of people to kind of pick their brains. I thought about different questions to ask them, but I also going to want a lot of you to participate and ask questions about, you know, what they're doing, their strategies, because this is just more interactive. And then, last but not least, definitely is, what was it, about a year ago, Kent, you were here? Yeah, it was like 2 years ago we had Kent here. And at that time, his company was not professionally rebranded but his company is now. And it's his new company is Roof for All. It was formerly Topstone. And they have a very interesting model. They buy like lower end properties. Like I'm talking, they're buying houses from $15,000 to $40,000. And, you know, some of them are Section 8, but they're buying in areas where there's job creation and stuff. And so they're stabilizing their portfolio, and they build out their own management teams in those areas. And now they're up to about 600 units. And now they're going to start scaling. So they're buying about 50 properties a month right now. So it's a little bit different. You're going to see a lot of difference between his model, which is kind of a collective group that are buying together, and David's model where he's, hey, if it fits this, if it's in Arkansas, Florida, I'm buying it, and this is how I'm doing it. So we're going to kind of dissect all of this, and then hopefully we all learn something important, or maybe push us in a different direction than we're going. So I think what we'll do is I'm going to ask a question, and then we'll start with David. And if you could just kind of go in and just talk about your out-of-state investment strategy. It doesn't have to be the full extent, but just give us kind of an overview of what you're looking for right now and what markets you're in and where you might go next.
All right, so my out-of-state investing strategy is to find properties that are going to cash flow that I can buy under market value, and then I can recover 100% or more of the money that I put into them. So has anyone here never heard of the BRRRR model or that phrase BRRRR? Someone has to be brave and raise their hand, or I'm going to assume. Okay. So BRRRR is an acronym that stands for buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. It's the order in which you purchase property and then refinance it. Rather than buying a property and at a low price and financing it and then dumping money into it to fix it up, I want to go buy it at a low price, dump money into fixing it up, and then pull the money back out. That way I don't run out of money. So because of that, if you do this correctly, which means I have to be all in for about 75% of what the property's after repair value will be, I can go get a loan for 100% of what I put into, and it takes a ton of stress off of me to find the next hot market that's going to blow up. Because I don't really need the market to appreciate if I've already recovered 100% of my capital, and I can go invest in the next one. So I find that a lot of investors that want to invest out of state, they're stuck on where should I go? What market should I be going into? What's the next big thing? And they just spend so much time running over that in their brain that they don't actually do anything. Like Bo was saying, I have 3 criteria that I look for. I want it to cash flow positively, I want to be able to pull out all my money, and I want it to not be in a neighborhood that's going to cause me headaches. So I'm not going to buy a D-class property. I'm not going to buy anything that I can't refinance, so it has to be worth at least $50,000. Or actually probably more like $62,500, and nothing that's going to cause me a headache. I don't want to buy a job. I want to buy an investment. So because of that, I've taken a ton of pressure off myself, and I can just go buy properties wherever it makes sense, wherever they happen to be. So what I usually look for is properties that have a lot of, or areas that have a lot of 1% properties. So areas that have properties that will rent for 1% of whatever I'm paying for the property, because I know if it's a 1% property, it's going to cash flow. And I've just made it very easy on myself, because my goal right now is to become the top realtor in the Bay Area. So I'm putting a ton of time into growing this business and doing a lot of production and becoming the best real estate agent I can be. I don't have a lot of time to go focus on my investing, which is probably where a lot of you guys are. You're working a job, you're raising families, you're doing other things. You're not going to go run a hedge fund that buys 50 properties a month, although that would be super cool and you probably would learn a ton of stuff from doing that. I'm interested to hear about it, right? So I build systems where I have people that do the work for me so I don't have to worry about it. In the book I talk about, Bo mentioned my core 4. It's a landlord, a property manager, a deal finder, which is usually an agent, and a lender. And if I have those 4 people and they're really good at their jobs, I can invest anywhere. It doesn't matter. Those 4 people have all the information that I need to be able to make a good decision, and the pressure's not on me to go learn that market and figure everything out and try to like push this whole thing, which, if we're honest with ourselves, is what holds most of us back. I really want to get started, but I don't know, fill in the blank. Right? That doesn't stop me, because I don't think, well, I need to go learn it. What I think is, whose job is it to go learn that? I need to make sure that's a trustworthy person that's working for me, right? And I have this belief that rock stars know rock stars. So if you're a rock star, you're working with a rock star, you're super good at what you do, you tend to hang around other people who think the same way and act the same way. Like, Jimi Hendrix isn't playing with a crappy drummer. Can we all agree that? Like, he can say, I want the best drummer in the world to play with me because I'm so good at what I do. And on the same token, the guy who's got like a garage band and sucks is probably not going to get a great drummer to come play with them because they're not dedicated to their craft. They're not trying to be excellent. So when people ask me, well, how do you find your core four? I don't have to. I have to find one rock star, get a referral from them that they love, get comfortable with that person, leverage the two of them to find me the third person. And eventually I have a core four that I trust. And then the more I do business in that market, the better people that I find. And I start to get like better players on my team. Like, imagine a pro sports team. You're just drafting better players every year and replacing the people that you have. And once you've done that, you can build a system like I have where I basically get a text message from an agent that says, hey, David, we should buy 123 Main Street. I copy and I paste it to my property manager, and they send me an emoji of thumbs up or thumbs down because I've told them, make sure this is not a bad neighborhood. I don't want to buy anywhere where the neighborhood's rough. And the rule for them is I don't want to buy anywhere that you don't want to manage. If you don't feel comfortable about this, then I don't want to own that property, right? And then I send it to the rehabber or the contractor, and he goes to the house and he looks it over and he gives me a bid of what he thinks it would cost to fix it. And if the numbers work, I send the agent a text message that says, okay, I'll buy it. And they send me a contract and I sign it. It's that simple. I don't stress over this. I don't worry about it. I don't need to have all the answers right away. Once it's in contract, my agent knows I'm going to talk to the home inspector and I'm going to talk to the rehab guy. They're going to go to the house together. They're going to put their heads together and figure out if they actually gave David an accurate number for the rehab. And if we're in consensus about it, then I move forward with buying the property. During that period of time, I'm going to verify the rents are actually accurate. I'm going to ask the property manager about that. I'm going to verify the comps that my agent was looking at actually make sense to me, but I have plenty of time to do that. The house is already under contract. I have this, due diligence period. And I've just simplified it so much so that it doesn't stress me out, because the minute this starts to stress you out, you won't move. We will move forward as much as we're comfortable with, and as soon as you hit a period where you're like, yeah, I don't know about this, you're going to freeze and you're going to stop, and then rock stars are going to stop working with you, right? Because they're playing that damn song. Like, they're there to sing and they got the mic and they want to go, and you're unplugging the microphone and they can't be on stage. It's not very long that they're going to be working with you, and then you make it harder on yourself. So I'm all about simplifying things as much as I can, and when I talk about real estate, people will bring problems to me, and I want to simplify those problems down into numbers. Like, I don't care if you're afraid of termites or a foundation or a bad roof or whatever. How much does that cost? How much would it cost to fix it? You turn it into a number, you plug that into your spreadsheet, and then you make an offer based on what that number is. So that's kind of the gist of what I'm doing. I started in California, I moved to Arizona, and then Florida, and now I'm in Arkansas, and I've got some shares in apartments in Atlanta, Texas, and Florida. I've got shares in a mortgage note fund, and I own a couple mortgage notes. But most of what I'm doing is just wherever it makes sense. I don't care what the next hot market's going to be. I care where I have a competitive advantage, where I know someone who has deals. So if I find a great wholesaler that's bringing me great deals, I'm going to go find a lender and find a contractor and put myself together like a team and a property manager that can manage there, and I'll just keep buying. So that's kind of the gist of what I'm doing. I'm not doing it at a huge scale. I'm just slowly inching my way forward. I'm just hitting singles and the doubles occasionally here and there. And the majority of my focus is on becoming a top realtor. I'm also affiliated with biggerpockets.com. If you guys don't know about that website, it teaches people how to invest for free. It is a super good resource. They have a really good podcast. You can hear me on there. I've been guest co-hosting, and it looks like I'm going to become the permanent co-host here in the next couple of weeks. They're going to be announcing that. So I put a lot of time into that. And what I love about real estate investing is that it's giving me a place to put the money that I'm earning, and it's not taking a ton of my time. Once you've got a system built, I just drop a deal into it. It goes through my system, and it comes out a closed deal that cash flows.
Excellent. He's practiced that a lot, so I don't expect all of you guys to be that well rehearsed. So don't feel intimidated. Why don't we dive in with you? Just kind of like how you got started, your philosophy on investing right now, and what you're looking for, and kind of dig into the Indy market, why Indy, and what you're looking at, like 2% rule, that kind of thing.
Sure. So I got started investing back in 2012, so it hasn't actually been that long, but I started buying in the Bay Area because trying to find properties that cash flowed back then. You could actually do it, as opposed to nowadays where you can't actually find anything that cash flows unless you're putting a lot down. Then from the Bay Area, I kind of moved to Stockton because that was the next area that was cash flowing, and it had just gone into a pretty big downturn by filing bankruptcy, and where everybody was seeing blood in the water, I was saying that's an opportunity. So I went and bought in Stockton, and I did not buy in the best of areas because unfortunately when you're buying even there in competitive markets, you're taking whatever you can possibly find. And by the way, we'll come back to that one a little bit later because it's a competitive market out there right now to find the deals that, you know, David was just mentioning. Finding properties under value, under market these days, that cash flow, everybody's looking for them. So you got to have some good strategies in place to do that, or a good team. So for me, moving from Stockton, because eventually buying in Stockton no longer makes sense because cash flow there, if you look around, unless you're putting a lot down, doesn't really make a lot of sense. So then the question is, well, where do you go invest? And everybody tells you, hey, invest in your backyard. That's one of the main things. Invest where you know the people, where you can show up, spend 2 hours, go take a look at the thing if you need to. If there's an emergency, go take a look at it. But you know what? Honestly, that's not really my model. How many times have I gone to go see my properties in Stockton? Maybe once a year. If you're actively going after your properties and managing them, you're probably not necessarily doing it right. You can do it yourself, but that's not my model. My model is to put the right team in place. They're the operations arm of your business, and your job is to run the business, which is to network, meet other people, find investment opportunities, understand different markets and what your strategies are going to be, and then put the team in place to go do that work for you. So then where can you do that, right? The question is, what type of a market can you move that's not in your backyard, that you can find a good deal and start, you know, analyzing them? Well, to me, I had to find a market that looked for some key indicators. Well, for me, a key indicator is what happens in a downturn. What markets stay stable in a downturn, because we just went through one, so I like to think a little bit defensively, and still cash flows in a good way, and, you know, has good population growth, job growth, a lot of key factors that you look for in stable economies. So I narrowed it down to a few different cities, and I'm sure that all of you who are going to be looking out of state are probably going to try to narrow it down. That's a pretty good recipe right there. You can add some more indicators to that as well. But, you know, job growth, population growth just means that, you know, the rents eventually are going to continue to rise. And stable markets, if you go back and look at what happened in the downturn, how bad were they hit, and are you comfortable with that kind of a swing up and down, then you'll probably find something that's, you know, going to meet a criteria that you're looking for. So then the next criteria you look for is cash flow, right? So where do you find something that's going to meet, you know, cash flow? Well, you start narrowing down those specific areas. I narrowed it down to 3. So I picked Indianapolis, Kansas City, and Cleveland, Ohio. And then I just started calling other investors. I started calling property managers, interviewing them, talking to them, figuring out what are your strategies, what exactly is it that you're doing out there, and does that make sense to me? Does that jive in my brain? Is that something that I can do? Is that something that I want to do? And those are questions that you have to ask yourself, because it's not a simple thing to go invest out of state. You have to have a lot of trust in people, because you're not necessarily there to look at everything. You know, David's built a lot of great processes, so he probably has people on the ground that he trusts. Well, that's the key. You need to be able to interview people and find those rock stars. But how do you do that if you're just starting out, right? You don't really have a lot of stuff. You can't bring a lot of background to it and say, hey, I've got, you know, hundreds of properties across multiple states, so come, you know, rock stars, come work with me. What's to differentiate you from anybody else that's out there? Well, that's going to be the way that you talk to them. So you have to educate yourself. You have to know what you're looking for. And if you explain to them what you're looking for and give them a criteria, they're more easily able to help you find what you're looking for. If you go to them and say, hey, I'm just an out-of-state investor, I don't really know what I'm looking for, but I want cash flow, that's not going to get you very far in these markets, right? Because these people are already working with people that have money, that are willing to do the deals. And if you're coming to them and you don't know what your criteria is, you're setting yourself a step behind everybody else. And you need a leg up in this business wherever you go. So once you've built your criteria, you've started interviewing people, you've narrowed down your markets, you build your team, and you differentiate yourself in some way or another. You analyze all of the deals that come to you, and you give feedback to the people that you're working with. If you give them feedback, they'll know that you're active versus just getting an email with a deal. You're just like everybody else on that same list. Follow up with them. You don't have to follow up with them every single time because they'll probably get a bunch of mails as well, but you have to have a regular touch point with these people so that they know that you're still actively searching. Now, let's get to finding those deals, right? So how do you find the deals that you're looking for that are, the recipe he gave is exactly what you need to find, something that is under value of the market. So, if you go and find a property that's $90,000 that's listed on the MLS, and you think, hey, this is going to be fine, it cash flows, well, guess what? It's listed on the MLS, and unless it's distressed in some way and nobody else wants to touch it, you're not going to find any way to add value to that property to bring it up to a point where you can then potentially either refinance it or have some other type of an exit strategy. So upfront strategies are really important, but exit strategies are just as important, if not more important, than the upfront strategies. You've got to know what you're going to do with that, with whatever you're buying. So if it's a $90,000 property and you're not going to have a lot that you can potentially do with it because you're buying it at market, what's your exit strategy? Well, he's got one. He's going to refinance and have absolutely nothing inside of there. Well, what are some other exit strategies? Well, you could keep your 25%, 20% down and cash flow on that property. You could work with portfolio lenders, get a bunch of properties together and then refinance a whole portfolio. You could, fix it up a little bit. You could sell it. You could hold it for cash flow. You could do short-term rentals. There's probably a bunch of other strategies out there, but understand when you're analyzing a deal, if you have to find a way to make it work, because inventory is light, you got to know what your incoming strategy is and what your outgoing strategy is. Even if you're going to hold on to it for 5 to 10 years, you still have to plan what you're going to potentially do with that property after 5 to 10 years. I guess that's about it.
Okay, there you go. Okay, next we're gonna. Thank you. All right, we're gonna go to Aaron next, and we're gonna find out where he's buying, and what was your strategy? How's it working? What have you learned from it? What will you do differently? And obviously, you're super busy with your concrete business and your residential flip. So, what's your thought on growing that right now, or is it kind of backburnered because you're so busy with your day-to-day?
Well, when I hear these guys, talking about all the stuff they're doing here, I feel like blessed. Blessed, and it's kind of like I feel I'm out of place here because I'm, not doing that much. But anyway, so he's... Me too. No, just kidding. So I'm going to just tell you guys a little bit how I started and how I see the business, right? So always when I see an opportunity, and when I say an opportunity, it's kind of like... in the beginning, when I was starting, I felt that I could do almost anything by myself. That's how we feel. Like it's like, it's hard to trust someone or find someone that you want to kind of work with, right? But after a while, I realized that surrounding myself with people that have the experience that I don't have, that's the best way to approach things. Okay, it's very, very difficult in this business to know everything about real estate. Okay, I feel like I know a little bit, and when I combine my knowledge, if it's in in the concrete business or structural areas, that kind of stuff, and managing project, whatever it might be, if I'm kind of putting together my knowledge with somebody else that has, that can put all the paperwork together, and which I'm not bad at it, but I'm not great at it, right? Structuring the deals and dealing with all that paperwork. Like I want to make sure that our project's moving forward, right? So one thing that we decided a few years back, myself and my business partner, was that we had to start kind of investing in passive income properties, so in rentals. So we got all excited, and we found a property in Memphis. It was beautiful, like 10 years old, 32 units, and we was like, we're gonna go there, we're gonna buy this thing because we had the money at the time to buy and all the stuff, right? But we got so excited with the numbers, everything, that when we got there, it was the only place on the entire neighborhood that was nice. You know, it's like, holy shit, Stuart, we should know better. You know, luckily we had planned to go to Indianapolis and Kansas City after that, which we ended up buying stuff in there. But even though it's we happy with the amount of cash flow we're having from those properties there, which is it's kind of ridiculous when you get a 13 cap and that kind of stuff, right? But you can, right? So it's a no-brainer when we decide to go invest out of the state because prices are just crazy, right? So what we do, going back a little bit, we do a bunch of flips. We get some of the money, and then we throw on rentals because we want to make sure that we are, I wouldn't say protected, but we have cash flow, and then we are building up our portfolio, right? So we have a few properties in Kansas City right now, in Indianapolis. But actually, I'm going to be selling them because I feel like we made a mistake buying fourplexes and eightplexes and single family, all that stuff. So my plan now is to get rid of everything, even though we're very happy with the return, and go and try to buy a 50 unit or 80 units or whatever. I like to dream big and think big, and I know that. Even though we're making money again, in there is not for me personally, is not the right thing to keep holding on fourplexes, that kind of stuff, right? So now another thing that I don't know if Bo allow me, but is still on the passive income and how you structure deals. Is like I just partnered with a friend of mine, which most of you guys know here, Chris Porter, that even though most of people don't see how you can make money in our area because everything is so crazy expensive, he has a lot of knowledge and ways to structure deals that I don't know. In the last couple of months since we joined, forces, I have learned so much about Chris. So now I'm already changing my mentality again because of the person that I'm surrounding myself with, right? So an example, he gets. We saw a property today, actually. Is a fourplex. But, we can change that and build 20 units on the same space. It's like, we're going to find a way that we're going to open up a easement in that we're working with the city. We did all that today. We start this morning and everything is in place already, where instead of going around the block to get to BART station, people that are going to be renting these particular spaces from us when the project is done, you're just going to walk in a alley right here and get to BART, which is like 100 yards, right? So we're looking for ways where you can get 4 units and tune into 20, 40, 50, whatever it might be. So it's a little bit of a different model, but it's stuff that I'm also, very interested because it makes a lot of sense, right? But I love, investing in rentals, and we have some specific areas that we're making money, and we like to, to keep going there. But at the same time, whenever it's time, like for me, it's a little early right now, but in a couple months, I already have a few specific areas. If it's somewhere in Florida, if I like where you guys coming from. I know we can make money in Savannah, in Georgia, that kind of stuff as well, including the areas where I'm investing right now. But if I'm going to go back to Kansas City to invest there and buy more properties there, I'm looking at 80, 100 to plus units. And one of the reasons is that first you make more money, and when you lose tenants, it's when you have like 80 apartments, if you keep 80%, 90%, whatever it might be, depending on the area, the empty space that you have in there is not gonna, kind of affect your cash flow, that kind of stuff, mortgage payment, all that stuff, right? But one thing that I learned, and I don't know if it's still the same, but when we were trying to buy the 32 unit in Memphis, in Tennessee, we went to 3 different places to see if we could find someone to manage the property for us, and they said, unless you buy 100 or 200, we're not interested. We couldn't find almost anybody that was interested. They said it's too small for us, right? So at that particular time, we started kind of changing our minds a little bit to, but it's, how are you going to buy something so big, right? And that's when you surround yourself with investors, everything. And if you find the right deal, it's going to be really easy to kind of bring people in because it's all about the numbers and location, a bunch of other stuff, right? But if you structure the right deal, even if you don't have investors at a particular time, they're gonna come, you know. So I think that's pretty much it for now. Pivot. No problem.
Now, what I think is interesting is kind of if you hear everybody's kind of story, and now we're going to go with Kent's story, where their focus when they started was to buy the low end of the market in different markets that we were talking about: Kansas City, Ohio, like Cincinnati, or Cleveland, or Memphis. So he's buying, but that's their niche that they found that's working for them. But I think the reason their company is constantly evolving, which in real estate we always have to evolve, and we have to figure out you're going to make a lot of mistakes, especially if you're buying out of state. And what you're going to realize is that you do need your core four, as David Green says, is true because, going back to what Aaron said, it's like, yeah, it's kind of a pain in the ass to own single family houses out of state. And then at the end of the day, if you're getting $300 positive cash flow, how many of those do you need to get the cash flow you really want? It's a lot of houses. So if you're going to do that, this is an interesting model because that's what they've done, but they're setting up their own management now in those markets because it really comes down to good property management and turnover and all that adds up, and you're going to, you get nickel and dime. So if you don't mind going over your strategy, how you guys got started, your growth potential, like that you guys sometimes have turnkey opportunities, and give us a good overview.
Thank you. I just want to thank Bo, first of all, for inviting me to speak. So the rebranded company name is Roof for All, and basically it means that we're looking to provide roofs, homes for affordable housing tenants, low-income families. We also have a partner that is actively involved in senior assisted living facilities in the Chicago area, but we, as a company, haven't really jumped into that yet. We're just kind of watching him do his thing, and eventually that's going to be part of our core business as well. But yeah, I mean, it's been a really long ride. I've actually been doing real estate since like 96, 95, right out of college. So I started in Sacramento. Back then it was like kind of post first Iraq war, and there was like a mini recession, and so there were a lot of houses on the market. Not quite post 2008, but still properties were really inexpensive. You could buy stuff in the south side and the north side of Sacramento for like $40,000 a house or $70,000 for a duplex. And so I was right out of college, and at the time I was like really excited, and I read all these books, and I was gonna go and buy something in San Francisco, and because they just announced like the ballpark was going to be built in South of Market, so I went down to look around, and I was like, oh wow, it's like $350,000 still. So that was like way out of my range at that time. So I started going further and further out, and Sacramento still mostly blue collar areas, and myself and a buddy of mine, my brother, we just learned by jumping in. I told you I read a lot of books. The main theme of all these, I don't remember anything like all these like Carlton sheets and all these books, they teach you all these things, but the main thing is like every single book always said, you gotta take the first step. If you don't take the first step, you'll never get anywhere. So we just dove right in. And so yeah, we made a lot of mistakes, but over time, the value started to come back up. And I was actually working at Bank of America at the time, so I became a regional sales manager. I worked there for like 10 years. So as a regional sales manager, one of the perks was I was traveling a lot, and I traveled to the Midwest. I'd do these like 7-day, like I'd go to like Little Rock, Arkansas, to Houston, to Springfield, Missouri, to back to Arizona, and then so I got to see all these places. And when I saw them, I always thought, hey, this is very similar like Sacramento. It's like the prices are very similar, and it's very the markets are really pretty plain vanilla, and people always say nothing ever goes up in value here, and so it's kind of like that was the case in Sacramento. So over time, we really, myself and my buddies and my brother, we just kind of stuck in that lower range, and we got comfortable with Section 8. We got comfortable with affordable housing, and I always thought like, wow, if we could just like buy this whole block, I mean, we could change it up and make it better or whatever. So that was like a little dream that I had, but we had a different kind of model back then. We actually did a lot of different things. We're really leveraged. So when 2008 hit, actually, it wiped us out like completely. I had to file for bankruptcy. It was like a horrible time, years of fallout, and I was actually out of real estate for like 3 or 4 years. And so after that, we had at that time, 2008. We were actually in multiple markets as well, and we had scaled and we had bought a lot of properties, and it's just the overriding theme always was that it's very, very difficult to establish anything in any market because you really have to scale. Otherwise, you're just one of the guys, and there's a property manager that's managing like 200 properties, 500 properties, and you're just one of the guys, and they don't really care if they lose that one relationship because they have bigger relationships. So it just kind of always was an uphill battle at that time because we were still learning, even though we were doing it for like a number of years already. Every time we got into a new market, same mistakes. I mean, they're not even like mistakes. It's just like things that you just kind of have to go through. Like you will start with like dealing with certain people, generally like wholesalers that bring you the deals, and then you try to like kind of dangle a carrot in front of them to make them do things for you, and with the promise that you might buy more properties and hopefully they'll actually do the things that you want them to do. But as you grow and you scale, you realize, well, these guys actually can't handle the volume, or they got a different agenda or whatever. So in a way, 2008 crash hit. It was right around that time when we were like, everything was kind of like imploding anyways to a certain degree. We own a lot of properties, but there was just a lot of stuff going on in various markets, and we were like really spread out, and it was not that good of a situation anyways. But about 3 or 4 years ago, actually, my buddy actually had stayed in real estate, and he actually was part of the recovery in the Bay Area, so he actually got back on his feet really quick, but I didn't. And he called me up and he said, "Hey, got a group of guys, and they're a little nervous. They're West Coast, East Coast, and they're a little nervous about these coastal cities. They want to start looking at buying some stuff in the Midwest." I was like, "Oh, no way, no, thank you. I don't want to go there again, right?" And so he said, no, we should come on and talk. So I went on, sat down, talked to them a little bit, got a feel for what they were thinking, and they wanted income. And so quite frankly, since the downturn, I hadn't really looked at any of the areas. It's one of those things where it's like, let's put it behind me, and I didn't want to look at any of the areas. And I realized, we were actually dealing in always in like C areas, C minus, but not like war zones, not like the south side of Chicago, not like, these really, really rough areas. And these houses that we were like buying and selling for like $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 pre-08 were like all over the place. And when I say all over the place, I mean all over the place for like $10,000, $15,000. And we're like, what? That's crazy. So I actually called up like a guy that I worked with, who's now our partner in Kansas City. He's native to Kansas City. And he had also taken the same path as me. And, he kind of lost everything and got a divorce and everything too. And it was really ugly. And he said, yeah. There's some houses that I used to own, and they're on the market right now for $15,000, and I rehabbed them, and they're in really good shape. He said, I don't know what's up. Should we buy these? Should we not? I was like, I don't know, man. I got these guys here in the Bay Area. They want to buy these, and what do you think? So we were very nervous about it, but we kind of got into a partnership with them, and we started like buying these houses for like, literally like $15,000, $20,000, $30,000, but we knew these areas were not bad. I mean, we were in and out of these areas all day, like, a few years ago, and we just knew that half of the neighborhood was abandoned, but it didn't become like, a war zone. It's just that there were just half of the neighborhood was boarded up, and it's just quiet. And so I went back out to visit some of these areas, and you walk down the street, people still waving hi to you. They're still really nice, but there's a lot of boarded up houses. So we said, okay, let's give it a try. And he was still working full time. I was working full time too, but we just tried to make it work. And so this group got really complicated, and they had like multiple partners, but we actually bought like 100 houses in Kansas City in like 3 or 4 months, and we actually built teams to. So at that time we were like, okay, let's buy like the cheapest ones, and let's buy like the ones that needed the most work, so we can actually build a team and all that stuff. And so we did that, and within about 8 or 9 months, we started stabilizing everything. We started getting Section 8 tenants in there. And the reason why we went with Section 8 was because we always thought, okay, well, this is the lower end, so we don't want to be chasing people around for rent, because that's the one really, really difficult thing to do on the low end. is chasing people around for rent, because come Christmas time, you almost will never get a check. Stuff like that, right? So we went with the exclusive Section 8 model, and but then we broke off with this group because they were like, they were just too much drama. And but I had a friend that I had met post crash that's from the Bay Area, who was always wanting to kind of partner up with us and do something. But we jumped in with this group first, and then I actually told him what we were doing, and he said, "Hey, we should do something." I said, "Nah, I don't want to like have a conflict, So he just kind of stood on the sidelines for a little bit. But the moment that we broke off with this group, and I gave him a call, he said, "Hey, let's do it. I'll seed the money, and then let's get started." And so we went back into Kansas City again, and we started buying. But stupid us. I mean, actually, for $25,000, you could actually buy houses that are already fixed up. It's like, why are we buying these $10,000 houses and killing ourselves over fixing them when they're available all day long at like $25,000 already fixed up? So it was just a unique time in the market because there was still so much inventory flushing out, and there was all these asset management companies that were divesting of, like they'd buy entire, portfolios of like 1,000 properties, and they take certain zip codes, and they just didn't want those zip codes, so they didn't care. They never even looked at the properties. They would just like dump them. And so we bought some houses for like $9,000. Like this one asset management company just literally dumped like 70 properties on MLS in one day, and every single one was $9,000. And 90% of them were like junk, but sprinkled in the middle were actually some houses that are like 5-bedroom, 3-bath, 2,700 square foot, practically rent ready. Turn of the century, 1900s, original woodwork. It was crazy, right? My partner walked in, he's like, "Whoa, let's get this right away." So we bought like 10 of those houses. So there are opportunities available, like in Kansas City, like 3 years ago. Like on any given day, you could look on MLS, and there'd be like 300 plus properties under $30,000 for sale in Kansas City. So, we're like, this has got to end sometime, because these properties are not in bad areas.
Yeah, that's why I couldn't find any, because he got them all.
Well, unfortunately, we didn't get them all. But the thing is, we tried to scoop up as much as we could, but then I started going to these meetup events, like Bo's event, and everybody and their mother was starting to buy in Kansas City. And so what I did was, we did a lot of research, and have some proprietary things that we look at. It's not even a secret. I mean, for us, the most important thing was there needed to be a large inventory of very cheap homes in the area. There needed to be a lot of Section 8 vouchers outstanding, and there needed to be some kind of redevelopment going on in the city nearby, because we always knew like these areas that were like completely wiped out were usually near downtown, usually near areas that were primed for possible redevelopment, because it's the oldest part of the city. Once people start moving out to the suburbs, and this area starts to kind of go to hell, and then then low income moves in, and then it just gets worse, and then at some point the city's like, "Oh, we got to fix this place." Let's get some redevelopers in here. Let's get some guys to build some nice, mixed-use buildings, and make it a little walkable, little cute, little new town or whatever. And that I've seen that because I've been doing this long enough where I've seen multiple cities that have done this, and it's all a cycle. So any of these big cities out there right now that have a population of like 500,000 or more that have this type of area are actually, at some point it's going to happen. It's just, is it going to be in the next 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? Like right now we're not buying in inner city Detroit, but that doesn't mean like in 10 years that's not a good buy, because something's going to happen, because there's still 700,000 people living in Detroit. It's not like everybody moved out and there's like 100,000 people left. It's still a big city. It's a major metropolitan area, and the city needs the tax revenue. So if there's a lot of vacant houses, a lot of lots sitting there, it's not generating any tax revenue. So.
What markets are you buying in actively right now?
So we're active in Kansas City, but not so much more, because the availability of homes at the price point that we like to be at is low. We're heavily buying in St. Louis, because St. Louis actually has a lot of very positive things going for it that a lot of people haven't been paying attention to. So we like to buy in areas that people are not buying, but we try to buy in advance of that. We were buying in Indianapolis like 3 years ago, but we stopped buying there because everybody started coming in, and you know, when you go in to buy a $10,000 house and there's multiple bids and they ask you for the highest and best, I'm out of there because there's no point in fighting for.
Highest and best is like 12, right?
Yeah, I mean, right? I mean, why even waste the time, right? So we were buying in Cleveland. I think Cleveland has a lot going for it. Like 2 years ago, I was not buying in Cleveland. We only started buying there for about a year ago.
So you said you had about 50 houses in escrow right now. So where
Right.
the majority of those houses?
The majority of the houses are actually in St. Louis and Cleveland.
Okay.
And Memphis. We have a lot of houses in Memphis.
And what's your average price out of those 50?
Well, actually, we've gotten smart about it. So over time, we realized like actually we've put in a lot of things in place where we actually can collect rents from the open market payers as well. So we've actually just been buying properties that are already either Section 8 occupied or tenant occupied otherwise. And we have a strategy with that is that we have a really short leash. If they don't pay, we turn them over, and then we will put a Section 8 tenant in place of them. So about 25 to 35,000 is the general price point on those properties, and we've been really blessed because as we've grown and scaled, more institutional type people have come in because actually this whole portfolio of properties was built with like local investors, individuals coming in and funding deals like literally one at a time. And because there's no institutional money for this kind of property, they just don't want to deal with it. It's a $30,000 property. It's a $20,000 loan. What are you going to charge you for it? They don't want to deal with it. So we have a lot of like individuals locally that have funded us. But then now, because we have a large portfolio and we can buy very large groupings of properties, then they're interested now. And so now we also have joint ventures with like a fund over in China. We're actually putting together a fund locally as well to acquire, and then also same thing on the back end. Like there's very little loan products for the long-term takeout. So like after you stabilize the property, there's not that many lenders that want to do a loan either because it's a small loan. So we're also putting together a fund so that we can actually back end fund it ourselves and keep it long-term. So we've had to kind of put all these things together ourselves over time because it's a real niche area. And I gotta tell you, I mean, what I'm telling you sounds exciting and everything, but I don't necessarily recommend it as an individual because like you'll go on Craigslist and you'll see all these places where people advertise like 35% return in Cleveland. And you're like, ooh, wow, really? But unless you scale and you're actually managing most of the processes with your own team, that's actually a unicorn. I mean, it doesn't, you can't get that because.
Yeah, it's difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's, can you pass the mic to Ryan real quick? Because he has, we'll come back to you, but we got to get Ryan out there. I left so Ryan, just a little bit about your background. You were internet technology.
Yeah. So
And then what are you doing now? And
mine will probably be a little shorter out of here because I probably have I'm guessing the least amount of experience up here. But so just I'll be real fast on the background. So when I came out of college in like 2000, 2001, I was all hot to go out and buy property. I was living in Portland, Oregon at the time, and I wanted to buy a place and rent it out to a bunch of buddies and like I called it the big baller house at the time, like a really sweet house that we could all live in, and eventually I would make money off of it, off of appreciation. And then I started going out and looking at stuff with an agent and some folks at financing, and they basically talked me out of it at the time. Said, that doesn't seem smart, you need to be, I had a good job and everything, but they said, that doesn't sound right. And at the time, I didn't find all the resources and all the groups that are out there and available today. I know there were groups, I just didn't find them. So I kind of backed off. A few years later, I decided I was going to start looking again. I kind of met a mentor that was working with me. We went out and looked at some places, and I ended up buying a few homes up there. In 2005, 2006. So if you think about the timing, my timing wasn't so hot. So that kind of stopped me again, and then I held on to a few properties through the downturn, moved down here through a job change, and kind of stopped again. So then fast forward to 2014, 2015. Again, I'm looking because I've always had a passion for real estate, wanted to get into it. Now I've found a lot of groups, a lot of podcasts, a lot of different things to educate myself a little bit more on how do you go about this process in a much more smart and thought out manner. I'm an engineer by trade, so I like to think of numbers. I like to be able to look at those kind of things. So once I kind of found that, it made a lot more sense. So What got me back in is actually a 1031. One of these properties I had up in Portland that finally came out from being underwater, was ready to sell. I did a 1031, and actually I started with doing a couple of turnkey properties. For those that most people in here probably know, but for those that don't, turnkey properties basically, you have a seller that has taken a property. Typically, they've renovated it, and a lot of times they'll also put somebody in it for rent, and then they'll sell it to you at a certain price. The reason it was appealing for me with the 1031 is it was easy to find properties quickly. And I went through kind of a third-party company that validates, basically went in and looked at a lot of turnkey companies in a lot of markets and said, we've gone in and vetted these certain people. If you're interested, these, we'll bring deals to you. So I bought a couple properties in Chicago and a property in Indianapolis. Fast forward another few months, the one in Indianapolis was doing really well. And actually the guy that I worked through, the turnkey operator, also was a wholesaler. So I started talking to him a little bit and saying, what I really want to do is the BRRRR strategy, which is essentially what David was talking about before. It makes a whole lot more sense to me. When you buy a turnkey property, typically you'll get cash flow and rent, but you're not going to buy below market. Typically you're going to buy at market because that turnkey operator wants to make as much money as he can as well, right? So I wanted to be able to take my money and make it go further. So I wanted to be able to buy property under market value, hopefully fix it up a bit, and when I'm done with it, I'm able to cash out, refinance it, like David was talking about earlier. So I did that in Indianapolis. So basically I went through the same guy doing some wholesale, through a wholesale deal. He actually helped manage the rehab for me. And that went pretty well. Actually, I own that property as a duplex. It cash flows very well for me. But I still had a little bit more to learn. And through that, I started going to a lot of these meetups, meeting more people. I met Ray here, and he was investing in Indianapolis as well. We sat and started talking quite a bit and just shared a lot of same mindsets. And so we started sharing networks that we had in Indianapolis. So he had some folks that he was working with. I had a few folks that I was working with. And through that, we started growing our network. And really, now what I've been doing the last year and a half, so I also left my job a while back. I was in management consulting, had a little girl, didn't really wanted to actually be able to see her during the week, so I decided to leave and try and do this investing full time. So I've been doing that for about a year. So since then, basically I've picked up a few more properties as rentals. I've actually got one under renovation right now. So I'm trying to blend strategies. So I'm basically looking at, okay, I can do this BRRRR strategy, but how can I get more than a couple $100 a month in cash flow, which is what typically you would look at in a rental. So I'm actually going towards a short-term rental strategy. So I'm actually renovating it with the intent to make it an Airbnb, VRBO property. I've met 4 or 5 different operators out in the market that will manage the property for you. They'll actually even go furnish it for you, so you don't necessarily have to go find the right furniture companies in different places to buy all of your stuff to get it up and running. So that's one strategy I'm doing to try and maximize my returns. We're doing Flip Together, looking for other properties, but now my strategy is kind of two-pronged. Short term, I need to make money because I'm trying to do this full time. So doing some of these short-term rentals, doing some flips. And then the long-term strategy is actually going back to the larger properties that we were talking about earlier, because I believe buying larger properties, 100, 200 unit properties for the long term is a great strategy. I believe that there's very good money in that, whether you end up holding them, refinancing at a later date, or whatever you decide to do. But it's not going to get me enough. It's not going to give me a lot of money today or tomorrow. So I'm kind of playing that as the long-term strategy, and then looking at, like I said, short-term rentals and flips as my short-term. Indianapolis, just real quick on that. I agree with what Ray was saying earlier. I picked it because I liked a lot of the demographics and some of the numbers that were there. The other thing I liked is that if you look at historical rates, a lot of people, if you've seen like Case-Shiller Index or things like that, they'll talk about where markets have been throughout the different cycles. The thing I liked about Indianapolis is that it was flat, almost near flat. And to me, that says, okay, it's not going to go up a lot. It's not going to go down a lot. So I'm probably not going to make a ton on appreciation, but I'm also hopefully not going to lose a ton and get to a point where I have to do something with the property. But their price to rent ratio is awesome. So I can do, if you listen to Bigger Pockets, they talk about the percent rule. So 1% used to be 2%. Now everyone talks about 1%. So my goal is, over 1%. If I can get over 1% on a property, and then I can look at maybe doing a short-term rental to make that even a little bit higher. That's kind of what I'm doing.
Cool. Very good. Is my mic on? Okay, now it is. Let's do a lightning round because you guys talk a lot. So David Green has ADD. You gotta like it. We're also gonna do a quick raffle, but lightning round, and then before we go to the raffle, we'll do the lightning round. How many deals a week are you looking at? I mean, what's your process to make sure you get enough deal flow so you're buying property? I know you're focused on your real estate business, but how do you make sure you're looking at deals and vetting deals? What's your process look like? And then everybody answer that question in a minute or less.
All right. So when I started, I was looking at probably 10 to 15 deals a week, right? So that's where most of you guys are going to be if you haven't already got started investing out of state, because you're trying to learn what a deal even looks like, right? It's like learning how to fish. You need to figure out what are the fish biting, where do you find them, where are the fish big enough that it's worth your time. You kind of go through this learning process. Well, at this stage, I don't even look for fish anymore. I look for fishermen that have caught so many fish that they're going to go rotten if they don't sell them to me cheap, right? So I'm actually looking for deal finders. What I spend my time doing rather than analyzing a deal is analyzing a person. I talk to this person and I figure out, do you know what you're doing? Are you experienced? Can I trust what you're saying? And if you are, then I just let them bring me the deal, and I'm not looking at it till an experienced, trusted person has already gone over it, and there's a really high chance that I'm going to want to buy it. That's where I'm at in my life right now. I think what you guys need to do is you need to analyze deals over and over and over until you feel like you can almost tell what it's going to say before you even look at it. That's how we come up with strategies like the 1% rule, because so many people have analyzed deals for so long and they came up with this rule where they realize every time it's less than 1%, it doesn't cash flow. So I'm not even going to bother going through the work, right? And once you know that a property is going to meet the 1% rule, which is a super fast thing you can look up right away, then you go into, well, does it have the equity that I need? I remember the three things that I said: cash flow, equity, and no bad neighborhood. My next question is, does it have the equity I need? So you need to get decent at estimating rehab costs and decent at looking up comps and figuring out around what would this house be worth, right? And if it meets that criteria, then you go into, well, is it in a ghetto or a war zone that I'm going to hate owning this property, right? And if it doesn't meet that criteria, well, then you scrap it and you go on to the next. But I wouldn't advise everybody to analyze every single property all the way from A to Z every time. That's not how the professionals do it. You're much more like a 49er, like a gold miner who's shaking your pan and you're looking for big gold nuggets, and letting all the junk sift to the bottom. We're just going to keep moving down the line?
No, actually, let's go into the raffle real quick to make it exciting. Who has not put their business card in here for David's book? Okay. He will autograph it. It's a great book.
Will you autograph my Camry if I autograph your book?
Hey, you can be in it.
I want the book. I need to learn.
Okay. Cynthia, may you come up here as our... Okay, who wants to be our picker? Tom, close your eyes. Make sure you mix it up.
This is Vanna White.
Cheetah's Landers picked me! That is crazy. Congratulations. Congratulations, David. David will, and then I'm going to take your guys' card and put you in my spam folder and just send you a bunch of junk mail, and I'll send you some videos, so it'll be good. Okay.
Do you want to continue lightning round, or do you want to let them ask us questions?
Yeah, we're going to go into questions.
Okay.
I'm looking here on Zillow, the prices for Indianapolis and St. Louis. I drove across country when I moved out here to California from New York. There's a lot of cornfields and empty space out there. How do you know what you're actually looking at? Is it do you have to analyze the area too? Because here in the Bay Area, it's obviously we have jobs, we have people who want to move here. These areas too are, they've been suffering from loss of jobs. People don't want to live there. It's cold. How do you analyze that part?
Mike, I'll start. So, like in Indianapolis, one of the things I was saying before, I'll look at overall job growth, and I'll also look at income growth, and I look for good things happening. So, like Eli Lilly's one of the big jobs out there, and they're growing like crazy. FedEx is putting in a brand new facility, pretty large facility out by the airport. I look for the big things and big companies that are looking to move into the area and trying to grow. And then we were just out there a couple of weeks ago, and we drove around some of these areas, and you can see, like, just it's kind of some of the neighborhoods are just going like crazy. And you just look at the growth, and the downtown looks amazing, and just looking for a lot of excitement in addition to some of the numbers.
So does it helps to go there then? I mean, to see the location to where the businesses are, because I'm looking here. I mean, there's properties here below 20,000 in those cities, and they need some rehab, which is it's just minimal. But do you know if it's close enough to that business, or is it like way out in the middle of the boonies?
So I'll just throw mine in real quick. I finding the right person on the ground, finding that rock star on the ground. I don't know every nook and cranny of Indianapolis. I know a couple of people who know every nook and cranny in Indianapolis, and I talk to them. And the only thing you got to be careful with is you also don't want to then turn around and call them like 5 times a day and be like, hey, what about this one? Hey, what about this one? Hey, what about this one? You want to, as you're asking them questions, you want to educate yourself so that you start to narrow down certain areas you're interested in, and then you can ping things off of them as you go.
You're asking because you want to make sure you'll have a tenant, right? Yeah, basically, right? So what's the quickest way you could figure out if you're likely to get a tenant for a property? Who can tell me, like,
Call a property manager.
there you go, right? Because that's their job to rent it out. So I appreciate what you're asking. You're asking the right questions, but you'll drive yourself crazy trying to figure out all the answers that deeply. Now, if you're going to, like, I'm going to buy 25 properties here.
But I mean, a lot of realtor property managers are going to say, I can get you a tenant.
Yeah, I wouldn't ask that one. I don't go with a realtor property manager ever. I use a big company that does this professionally, that's a rock star themselves, who are going to tell me kick rocks if I call them 5 times a day because they don't need me. You look for that guy. And he's not going to ruin his reputation because he needs your bid deal so bad. They make like $40 a month sometimes on this crap, right? So that's the way that I go about it is, hey, if I bought this house, what's my average days on market before I get a tenant? And that's where you know. If they're like, oh, it's me 180 days, then that's not a place to invest.
And I think, too, is that, although California in itself is like the 7th largest country, I mean, you would be surprised driving to, like, going to Virginia or going to, it's not much different than it is here. It's just, there's a lot of growth in a lot of different markets. And like the housing stock in South Bend, Indiana, right? It's all 1900, it's old houses, but, they got Notre Dame right there, right? They do have jobs. But you can still go and buy $20,000 properties.
Bugs, snow.
Yeah,
Tornadoes.
but people need to live all over, and our job is to find real estate that's going to be rented out with the least amount of headache. And so, like what I like about what David does is he's totally not emotional about it, right? He's just going through a checklist, and if it fits his criteria, he buys it. He's not looking for appreciation. He's buying the property that if it fits in that, he knows he can refinance and pull his money out. And then he's got 30 years and it pays off his mortgage. And, maybe he'll get a 2 or 3% appreciation or 1 or 2 per year, but that's fine because it works. So I think, like the newer people that are looking to go out of state, just gets overwhelming. And that's the thing. He just like cold as ice, I guess you'd say. And that's how he's like, does it make sense to buy? Can I put a renter in there? Can I refinance my money out? What's the long-term exit strategy? And I think, me personally, I have to take that away and go, okay, you got to just be more like dun, 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 and buy, right? Don't get too emotional about it. And if it fits, it fits. Who else has a question?
How do you scale up from a lending perspective? I know you mentioned about 10,000 or even 50,000 you put in. How do you scale that model of buying 3-4 houses if you didn't have the 20% down? What do you do? Do JVs, or are there lenders out there that will give you those smaller loans?
So understanding the lending product is actually really important. You need to ally yourself. So add another. You had that on your team, right? Lender.
Yeah.
Number 4, I think. So you need to work. If you're working out of state, working with the large banks probably isn't the best way to go. You're not even a small number to them if you're going to come to them with a $20,000 property. But the local community banks, they actually offer products for those areas because they focus on those smaller demographic of people as well as those price points. So there's a lot of ways to do it. But look at the lending products. You could start if you put your own money in for the down payment to buy it and rehab it. And you can BRRRR strategy out of it with some of these smaller lenders. You could buy a few of them, either do a JV with some friends or other investors you're looking to partner with, and then go get a portfolio loan out for it. It's a commercial loan. You won't have as good of a rate, but at the end of the day, you could still find a way to pull that money out. And it's all still based off of appraisals. So you could look at a lot of different ways like that. Anybody else?
There's 2 things to keep in mind with what you're talking about. One, you're buying a house for 20 grand. That doesn't mean it's worth 20 grand. If you buy it for 20 and you put 20 into it, it might be worth 65, 70, 75,000, right? Much easier to get a loan on a product like that. The second thing is you still need to understand that is peanuts for the lender, and they're not going to make a lot of money off of your loan, so they're not going to be hungry to jump in. What they want is a relationship with you, like what Ray was just describing, okay? Here's a hack, if you guys want to write this down, that I've learned to get lenders to let me borrow that normally wouldn't do it, all right? Lenders operate on like this balancing scale of we raise a bunch of money from the people that come into our bank on deposits, right? And then we lend it all out at a higher interest rate than what we borrowed. And at any given time, they can be anywhere on that spectrum between we have a bunch of money that we just raised and we need to lend it, or we have no money to lend, so we don't want to give out deals. Now, if they're in the point where they don't have any money to lend and you're coming for a loan, what do you think you're going to get? Right? So what I'll do is I'll say, hey, I'd like to establish a relationship with you where I do multiple deals and we have several things. Let's work out some terms. And they'll say, that's great, Mr. Green, but we're not really looking to lend on residential real estate. And I'll say, well, that's great, Mr. Banker. How would $75,000 in my account with your bank sound? And all of a sudden that conversation completely changes. Okay. Now, if you don't have $75,000, that's okay because somebody else probably does, and they're probably keeping it in a bank getting nothing. And you could say, hey, keep your money in this bank and I'll give you a 1% return on it just because you know you're going to get the loan, right? Understanding how the banks work will give you that advantage when it comes to getting approved for loans when normally that they wouldn't. And understanding that it's kind of like a two-way street. Like they're not obligated to give me a loan. So if I need to do something to make it worth their while, that's fine. And then once I've done a couple loans with them, I can pull the money out. They're not going to say no because we have that relationship.
Cool. Ken, you guys are doing a lot of volume. How are you guys sourcing your deals right now? How are you getting 50 deals right now? Are you buying off the MLS still? Or how are you buying these?
Yeah, in the markets that we're operating in, there's still 300 properties on any given day under $30,000, and that's what we look for. A lot of availability. They're not hot markets. I mean, they are to a certain degree. Like Memphis is hot on the higher range, like the mid-range. St. Louis starting to get a little warm, but mainly that, and we also we buy a lot, so we have a reputation for buying. So a lot of deals just come to us, like groupings of properties, packages and stuff. So yeah, we don't have to work too hard for it, and we also have in-house brokers that will go through all these. So I personally don't have to really scrub any deals on a daily basis if I didn't want to, but my inbox still gets a lot of emails from people that I dealt with when we first started, and I still work with them here and there.
Aaron, where do you source, like locally? Where are you finding your deals? What's your strategy? I've seen you doing a lot of networking lately. It seems like you kind of get the most deals just from networking and things like that. But is that kind of like how you found, kind of by effectively partnering? I mean, how do you see yourself finding more deals, and how do you do it out of state when you're buying out of state?
Yeah, I don't know if we have a lot of Fortune Builders people here. Do we? Who is Fortune? All right. So, through Fortune Builders, you end up meeting a lot of people, right? When you mentioned about the Chicago property, I have a friend, and he also, have properties or whatever, right? So we get to know a lot of people, and that's how we kind of check on markets, because I have friends personally that they live all over the country, right? And I try to stay connected to some of them. It's hard to connect to everybody, right? But we get a lot of information from those. So, hey, what is happening in your area? What is happening in Savannah, Georgia? What is happening in Chicago, blah, 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 right? So we get a lot of information, and also we have to do our homework, and we do some research to see what's going on and that kind of stuff, right? But just going throughout, the area, doing meetups and building new relationships is just me personally. I have been so busy with, the concrete company, which is apparently it's like foundation problems all over the, the country, right? So it's a networking. It's how I'm finding tons of deals in there. I have actually, someone have called me to look at a project, because of foundation problem. I left there, they decided to sell the deal to me instead of taking care of the foundation problem. The idea was to go there just to give them a bid, right? They said, I don't want to deal with this damn foundation, whatever. I was like, I'll take it if you want to sell, right? So it's we have found locally so many different ways to find properties. We actually, one of the most successful flips we had, we found a Craigslist. It was a property in Berkeley, right? And it's still we are still finding good deals on the MLS. Going back a little bit with the person that I'm partnering with, large deals in the Oakland area now. Most of the deals that we're finding, commercial deals, it's on LoopNet, so it's available there for for everyone. But it's interesting because now I'm starting to see, the business that I'm trying to run and where I wanted to go in a different way. Apparently like every month or every week I learn something. I was like, oh, I didn't think of that. That's why I like to go to meetups to hear what everybody has to say. Like, this panel here, everybody has different inputs, right? And but right now I'm really intrigued with this new business that I'm creating with, with Chris Porter, which is like, it's very profitable. And sometimes you don't have to do much at all, just going through entitlements and that kind of stuff. Like we tuning something that is an example. He did an entitlement by himself that he bought a gas station that was available for a long time for sale. Nobody wanted the gas station. He entitled, that space to, to become like 41 apartment unit or something like that. And he sold that entitlement. So I'm actually all over the place, but I know where I'm going, where I wanted to go. But between my concrete business, I believe through that business I have got into a lot of relationship and deals as well. An example where we're staying here right now, if for whatever reason we have an earthquake, knock on wood, right? But anyway, and a lot of structural damage is done to this particular building. It's not too many people out there that can come and say, hey, I'll take the building, I'll fix the building. So it's easy for me to get those kind of contracts and turn that in spacing into something a little more different and, create more space, going higher and that kind of stuff, right? So that's what I'm focusing myself right now is getting space with Chris Porter that we can turn that into something a lot more, desirable and kind of like a larger deal and project, right? And at the same time, I haven't, to be honest with you, I have not invested out of state in the last couple of years because I'm waiting for the right time and the right big deal that I want to go for it, But all the areas, apparently everybody's in, Indianapolis and Kansas City, and I have been thinking about Ohio, and I feel like if you stay engaged with the group and meetups, it feels like everybody has pretty much the same information where to go and how to approach those deals. One thing that I wanted to add, because I love the property, it's actually a property that we own, but I never been there before. I don't even know where. I don't know the address by head, right? It's in Indianapolis. That was the first property that we acquired, just a single family home, okay? And I'm mentioning that house because it's pretty unbelievable that at the time, apparently now, I just find out tonight that I guess we overpaid for the house. So, no, we bought about almost 4 years ago, and we paid $35,000 for the house, and we put $5,000 for the rehab. Okay, we have put a tenant in there, and every single month, a week before the first, his check arrived. We had the first time we had a 2-year lease with that particular tenant, and again we renting the house for $800, right? We bought the house with our money, so it's like it's 100% paid for. We don't have mortgage. We just have some fees in there, of course. But we don't pay a mortgage on the house. But it's like the house now, I think, is worth another 20 grand more than what we paid for. Apparently, it's a decent neighborhood for that price, right? Because it's very expensive, 35,000, right? So, so anyway, I'm just mentioning this house because it's just one single family. It doesn't matter if I'm doing, you know, here in the Bay Area, multi-million-dollar deals, whatever. I still have that love because it's the first house, but it's actually something that turned out to be great for us. So what we did, after 2 years, the tenant wanted to renovate, not to renovate, I'm sorry, to sign for another 2 years lease with us. So we actually gave him a break instead of raising the rent. Don't know if that was smart, but we love the guy so much that we said, you know what, we're gonna charge you a little less now because you know, we wanna make sure that someone like this, my question that I have for you, if that's okay, is that, you know, I know it's hard to manage all those properties that you guys have, a bunch of single family homes, right? Do we have a very high vacancy on those homes usually, or that was a question because I changed my mind a little bit about single family versus you know, multifamily and that kind of stuff. So I know I'm going off track a little bit, but I was just curious because I know some of you guys might be curious as well, having so many single family homes, how hard that is, right?
We actually do not have a very high vacancy rate because predominantly we have Section 8 tenants, so our whole business model for providing affordable housing is also to take good care of the tenants. So it's a departure from what a lot of other property managers actually do out there. A lot of people actually don't treat their tenants very well, especially on the low end. But you know, I'll have a flyer here. You guys can jump on our website and our social media. We have a lot of content where we have testimonials from tenants that we're taking really good care of them, that we place them when nobody else would place them, and so on and so forth. So, you know, especially on the low end, if you turn over a tenant, it wipes out the whole year's worth of profitability, maybe even two. So you really have to keep them in there. So we provide incentives, just like, you know, what you just said. It makes perfect sense to, if the rents aren't going up like crazy year to year, then it's okay to drop it $25 a month, you know, for the next year, because
That's a lot of money for them and they appreciate that.
yeah, they appreciate it. They'll take better care of the property. So there's a lot of these little strategies. We have a lot of things, you know, that our company does that are kind of like a little unique, but it all comes down to, we do want to make a social impact. That's also why we don't do apartments, because we'd love to, you know, apartments are really great, but we only impact like one apartment complex. Whereas if we have 100 houses and it's all spread out, then we're actually improving the neighborhood in 100 different spots. So social impact is very big for our company. That's one of our goals, is to improve the.
Great, thank you. We have a question back here.
Hi, my name is Miss Chambers, and I haven't heard anyone mention cross collateral. What do you guys think about that? Am I saying it right? Cross collateral?
Yeah, actually, we do those all the time. So we'll do like they'll do a blanket loan. So they'll take, like if you have 10 rentals, like let's say they're all 50,000, there's portfolio lenders that will do one loan and they'll blanket those 10 rentals. Yeah, that's the same thing as cross collateral. Yeah, we can, so you can do that if you have multiple rentals. Not a problem. And also, guys, you could always find people that have retirement accounts and teach them about self-directed IRAs.
I wanted to know a little bit about how your formulas for analyzing properties differentiates in different markets and cost per square foot.
Go ahead and start with you. You have the mic.
We don't have a traditional method of analyzing like everybody else. So, you know, if it fits the numbers for us, we buy it. So it's not really going to answer your question. We deal with really low end stuff. The decision making is very easy for us.
So I know who has.
Tell me more specifics, Ms. Reynoso, about what you're trying to figure out.
When you get a property, what formula do you use to analyze it? And does that formula differentiate in different markets?
So are you trying to figure out, if I look at houses in Alabama versus Indiana, should I look at different metrics? Yeah. Okay. The biggest difference of what you need to look at is going to be, you might not have thought about this, it's going to be your repairs. So a property in Florida is going to have a roof that gets just beat up by rain. A property in Arizona, hardly anything's going to go wrong. A property in Indiana, you might have snow issues or different areas, like they're going to have furnaces that are going to go out, whereas a property in a really cool climate might have very low repairs. So that's one thing that's very different about where you're investing in. because I don't factor in appreciation, it's pretty much the same criteria for just about everywhere. If you're not using the BRRRR strategy, if you're using the traditional strategy, so you're putting money down on a property, now appreciation becomes very important, because appreciation only matters if you're looking at opportunity cost. I could buy product A or product B. Well, if A is going to go up twice of what B did, then I want to make sure I get A right, because I'm putting money there and I want it to grow. Well, if you're recovering all of your money, it doesn't really matter. I'll just buy both. Right? But if you're going to be choosing one or the other, that's where appreciation comes in, and that's where you have to analyze differently. So when you're playing it that way, you're going to do more research on what does the local economy look like. Like, can anybody in here tell me what they think affects rising home values more than anything else? What's the one thing you think that affects home values going up or down? Jobs is exactly right. Be more specific than just jobs. Wages, exactly. Okay, the more that you make at your job, the more you're able to pay for a house, and therefore the more you will pay, assuming that there's not enough supply to go around. Does that make sense for everybody? So if you find the area where wages are rising faster, home prices are going to rise faster, unless it's like Kentucky and there's millions of open land that they could just keep building houses and then prices won't go up. Okay, so if you look for an area with restricted supply, economic barriers, geographic barriers, natural barriers that keep them from being able to build, and companies are moving in there, but not just companies that have better jobs. Like, we all know the Bay Area is expensive. Everybody agree? Who here can tell me why they think it's expensive? The number one reason that prices have come up so much. It's the jobs. We have like kids out of college are making 150 grand on their first job. Of course the homes are expensive. They're really not expensive when you consider what the wages are. They just seem expensive because most of us aren't making $150,000 right out of college. So if you find an area that has barriers to building, they're not going to issue very many permits. Like Austin, Texas, as everyone's seen, that's gone up a crazy amount, right? Well, that's because there's a river that runs through it, and they can't build houses within that city limits very much. They can only build like skyscrapers going up, and all these tech companies are going to Austin. With these tech companies come higher wages. With higher wages come rising home prices. So that's one thing that you need to change about how you're factoring in from different areas if you're using the traditional model of financing, which is put a down payment. It's like planting a tree and then letting it grow. If you're using the BRRRR model, I don't worry about it very much because I'm going to get all my money back and then go plant a tree over there too.
Got a question over here?
Yeah, so definitely been helpful. I guess the question around Section 8. So I know you do single family, but we've done some testing with some of our multifamily units on Section 8s, and your churn costs just crush you on that part, right? So I mean, yeah, you get your guaranteed rent on it, but historically they're pretty hard tenants on that when they're there. So how do you balance, or what have you found to be that successful median of trying to say, hey, keep that Section 8 tenant to kind of properly take care of your property so your churn costs don't crush you on that part?
Aaron wants to take this question.
I'll take it.
Well, you know, actually, you can screen Section 8 tenants too. You don't just take any Section 8 tenant that comes along. So we're relatively careful. I mean, you know, you can't do a credit check. It's not going to help you. But you can do things like, you know, before they move in, you know, you can make a surprise visit to the place that they're living in right now to pick up an application or something like that. And if you walk in and their place is a mess, well, guess what? Your place is probably going to end up being a mess too. So, you know, we try to filter as best we can. I mean, but we've had regular tenants destroy a place too. So not all Section 8 tenants are bad. And, you know, yes, this oftentimes is a single mom with like a couple of kids. But, you know, if they stay long enough and there's going to be wear and tear on the house anyways, then it's not always terrible. But as it relates to apartments, we don't do apartments to begin with, but then even if we're looking into apartments, we wouldn't do like high density, low income, because that's a recipe for disaster. Yeah, we
Question
wouldn't.
over here?
I got a few of them, but I'll limit it. Most of you guys are like buy and hold, I see. Does anybody do any flips long distance? And also, do you guys ever get involved in the lease options?
Here, but not.
Yeah. So in terms of, we're doing one right now. Not a lot. So not a lot of volume. We're just trying out the method right now, and I haven't done lease options.
David's done quite a few.
Yeah. So the strategy in most of these markets that we're talking about out of state, like Indianapolis, they've given a great description of that area. That market is like a bomb shelter. Like, you will be safe no matter what the rest of the world does, but you will be bored as hell no matter what the world does, okay? Like, that's a really good market to go to when you don't know what's going to happen. It's not where you want to be when everything's like popping and going great, right? in those kind of markets, which is what most of these out-of-state markets are, they're Midwest and Southern markets, you don't see a whole lot of fluctuation like what we see here. You typically will make more money in the coastal markets that fluctuate a lot if you're flipping houses, okay? You can still make money flipping houses in these markets, which I do, because like I was saying, I'll fix it up and then I'll refinance it and pull my money out. Well, I'm pulling out 75% of what it appraises for. If I'm all in for 75%, I could sell it just the same, and that 25% difference is what my profit would be minus my commissions and my holding costs and my capital gains costs. That's why I don't flip as much out of state, because you're going to make money, but the return on your time is just going to suck. It's just, they're very low margins that you're working with, where you could have the same margin in California, but you make like 90 grand. You're not going to mind just the return on your time. So what I tell people is that some of these markets that we're investing in is like investing with training wheels. Like, it is super, super hard to screw it up because it's a bomb shelter. You know what you're getting, right? You're not going to kill it and you're not going to suck. This is where you want to go to kind of get your teeth wet and figure out what you're doing a little bit, work out the kinks. And then once you feel comfortable with it, you're going to move into a market that makes more sense, like one of these coastal markets where the stakes are higher. You can make more, but you could also lose your shirt, some of these areas in the Bay Area. Does that answer your question a little bit?
Options, do you guys ever get involved in those? Because I know that a lot of investors look at those as being a built-in property manager, because if you get somebody in there with a big down payment, they're not going to trash the property, they're going to take good care of it. And
well, yeah. When I started doing what Bo's doing, buying properties in Indiana, I'm just going to do lease options. That's probably all that I'm going to do. What he's describing is buying a home and then leasing it to the person who's living it, and it's like a rent-to-own situation where they're basically making a mortgage payment to you and you're carrying the paper on this. I would say I don't want to do that in any market where I reasonably expect it will appreciate. Right? Because the whole reason I'm buying real estate is not because it's making me a ton of money. Like $300 a month isn't really changing my life. But 30 years from now, when that's like $2,000 a month and that property's gone up times 3, that's going to be life changing. Okay? You miss out on that when you do a lease option. Now, if it's a bomb shelter and it's just going to sit there and flatline the entire time, I will totally lease option that, because I'm getting rid of all my risk and I'm getting a decent return on my money, as long as I'm not leaving too much in the deal. You got to buy it right to do that. The courthouse stuff, yeah, because you're not leaving anything in the deal. You're buying it at courthouse steps. It's super cheap. You get it, you fix it up, you sell it to someone else, you hold the paper, you have a mortgage note, and if it ever goes wrong, then you can go and foreclose and take it back. But I wouldn't recommend doing that if you think a property is going to appreciate, because your tenant's going to benefit from your property tripling, not you.
Okay, we got a question back here.
So as a local flipper, I go check out my houses like once a week, and I'm a freak about it. How many times, if ever, do you guys ever go look at your properties out of state? That's like what scares the crap out of me, is not knowing.
So just went there a week and a half ago, but I didn't really go there to look at a lot of my property. I went there to meet the people, spend time with them, go out to dinner with them, build the relationships, because they're your boots on the ground and they're the ones that are going to continue to take care of your property while you're not there. So those relationships with the people that are doing the work for you is one of the most important aspects. Sure, you want to show them that you care, so you'll drive by one or two of your properties and take a look. Maybe it's one of your problem childs or something that you're doing. We looked at our flip that we're working on. But ultimately, it's about the relationships for when I go out there.
You done? Thank you. One of the things that we did with, we have 8 fourplexes on the same area, right? And so my wife and I, one day, we was like, how would you like to go to Kansas City? It's like, that sounds exciting. So anyway, we decided to go there because at some point, like in 3 years, you end up changing a lot of tenants. And one thing that we're doing on those properties now, we have like a VA waiting list that they call us all the time. Do you have anything coming up? Do you have anything? And they actually pay more, and it's just like a Section 8, right? And so the reason why we went there is because we felt like, when you have a property somewhere and you don't go there for 3, 4, 5 years, whatever, even though everything is going okay, you just feel like you don't really care much about the property. Like, we're not going to be traveling all over the country every month or every couple months, right? But we're like, we should go there just to kind of meet the new tenants and that kind of stuff. So we put a barbecue together. We invited them all. And then we felt that when they have that connection with you, it's kind of like they're gonna again take a better care of the apartment because it's like, oh, some dude from California owns the property or whatever, right? And so when you have that connection with them, so we actually thought that would be something cool to get to know who we renting the property to, and at the same time get that connection because we feel like by doing that, they're gonna potentially take a better care and because they feel like they have a relationship, they have met the person that owns those properties. So I just want to kind of add that up a little bit. So.
Does that spook anybody else not seeing the property? Is that like holding anyone back? Just Cynthia.
Just me?
Right here, right here.
I have a comment. So 2 weeks ago, I acquired 2 properties in Atlanta. So one day, the city called me. They told me they gave me a citation. They told me the door is open. So at that time, I just closed the deal, so nobody take care of the property. Then I hired a project manager to take care of the work. So I have a weekly phone call with the project manager, and he showed me he take pictures of the property and showed it to me. So it's a peace of mind after that. Yeah. So the first time I got the call, I was in panic mode. I got a citation, but I got the manager to take care of it.
My idea is like, oh, the paint looks good. When I walk in, I'm like, no, the paint is horrible. This needs to happen. I start freaking out.
She doesn't look at her properties anyway, so just buy one.
Every 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
Has anybody here ever bought a stock before from the stock market? Did anyone buy like Apple, Google, something like that? Name a company you bought stock from. Tesla. Have you ever driven to Tesla and looked at their factory to make sure that they're making their cars right? Yeah. Or okay. Most people don't. You trust the people that are like running the company, right? With your team on the ground, that's your company, they should be doing that for you. I have in the book that Gina gets to read, I talk about having my property build the entire inside of the house, right? So I see what the paint looks like, and I see if there's problems. Like there's tons of eyes that are on it, but they're just aren't mine. Like everybody here, if there's any of you that will admit it, when a car breaks down, we all go pick up the hood and we look at the engine and we don't know what the F we're looking at. You're supposed to watch the property, right? What I really need is a mechanic to look at my car and give me a piece of paper that says it's going to cost this much to go make it work. That's my home inspector. He's my mechanic. Like I need him to look at that house. I need my property manager to look at it. I need the agent to look at it. I'll just admit, I look at homes for a living. I'm a realtor and I own a ton of property. I don't know what I'm looking at. I can't tell you like from looking at a house if it's going to have problems or not. I need a guy to dig in and give me a report.
We got a question back there.
So I was just going to ask, as investors, there are a lot of different type of investors, right? There are investors that, like you had mentioned, David, looking at stocks. A lot of it's numbers, percentages, and returns, and risk profile, and supply and demand, and things like that. But I feel like a lot of that corresponds to investing in real estate too. There's obviously an emotional attachment to it because it's a physical, tangible thing, and I think that makes sense. But I guess for the guys on the panel, you've grown your portfolios. So how much of real estate investing to you is more about numbers and making numbers work and that risk profile versus getting caught up in the emotional aspect of buying a home? It's curious.
You're emotional about the money that it's making. Yeah. Sure, yeah.
So actually last night I got in trouble at my house because my wife was like, a deal came to the table and I was like, oh, this, it's, we can make $1 million on this deal. She's like, it's all about money for you. I was like, I'm looking at a deal. It has to be about the money. It's not like, if I tell you we can make 25,000, is that going to be better than $1 million? I'm just excited, whatever, right? So it's just like he said, it's when you get involved in real estate, I learned throughout the years to enjoy, working in real estate. Sometimes it's a lot of work, especially like I feel like I do more different things than most people between being a general contractor and then having the concrete company and then doing flips out of state and then some other stuff, right? But it's kind of like for us, it doesn't matter who we're talking to. It is about the numbers, right? So I personally don't get attached to properties at all. Stuart, love him. It's like he's like a brother to me. We've known each other for almost 20 years, right? And you know, Stuart used to get so in the beginning so attached to this house. Like, Stuart, you're not gonna freaking live here. Just move it on, man. Come on. He used to be so attached to those houses that we end up going all the way to LA to buy material from LA to bring back, because like I saw this material when I was in LA. I wanted that material to be in this house, right? It's cool because the projects end up being great, but it's like we lost that attachment. We feel like we do a great job. You know, place looks beautiful, but at the end it's all about the numbers. Actually, not at the end. It's from the beginning. It's like from the beginning, right? And so that's how we see it. It's always about the numbers, no attachment. At least that's how I feel. I don't know if you guys are different.
We got a couple questions. Let's move quick here.
All right, quick question for you, David. You build a Rockstar team, and then Rockstars start not performing around that. I mean, how do you constantly keep the metrics to looking at and making sure is when, you know what, hey, they may once have been a rock star, but they're not a rock star for me anymore, and I need to move on. How do you look at and measure that?
This might surprise you, but it gets easier the more rock stars you meet. This rock star introduced you to that rock star and that rock star. Now you've got 3 rock stars, and they're all working for you. And you're trying to like give each of them deals because you want to keep them in your world. So that's exactly what happened. I went out to Florida. I started buying out there. I had a really good property manager. They scaled at an incredible rate, and they just sucked. Like, they were terrible. They didn't return phone calls. They weren't paying attention to properties. They were giving me bids saying, hey, your turn's going to be this much money. And I'm like, I just painted it 9 months ago. There's no way I need to paint that house again, right? So I got rid of them. So my philosophy is I always have a minimum of 2 property managers in any market I'm in for that exact reason, right? But what happens is I met the new guy that I'm using through the contractor that I found through the first property manager, right? And he's a million times better. Now he's also introduced me to like better handymen, and I bought 3 deals that were wholesale deals from his wholesaler that I've met that needed like, I bought it, did 0 work, and pulled out about 10 grand on every property, more than what I paid to get it, right? Because this wholesaler was killer, and he said, well, David's a rock star, he'll close if he says he's going to close. So your biggest problem is when you're new and you're trying to figure out like how to get established in there. Once you are established, like when you're the Justin Timberlake of whatever, the producers come to you and say, I want to make your next hit. Here's my best sample of music or whatever, right? Like he doesn't have to go digging to find the guys like when you're new and you're trying to get started. So that's a good question, but that will be your last problem you'll ever have once you start to surround yourself with rock stars.
I love your analogies. I mean, does he have this guy like rock star and basketball? If you ever read his blogs, like I don't know how the hell you come up with this shit, but it's awesome. We got a question here from Kenson.
So 2 questions. One is for David. So how is what is the rate you get for your BRRRR strategy of financings? And another question is for Iran's. So you're talking about getting into 100 and 200 units. I'm looking at like 4plexes all the way to 10 units complex. Besides that, you cannot find property managers. What is the reason behind it? Because my thinking is a lot of money in one basket. If the unit got destroyed, like that could be a big damage, and it could be a negative cash flow right away if a big earthquake or anything. So, yeah.
Grab the mic.
Are you asking my rate of return, like my ROI, or my interest rate that I'm getting from a bank? They're not good because I'm not getting regular loans like you guys can get because I have too many properties. So I'm probably doing commercial loans around 6 to 7%, like 25-year amortization period and a 5-year balloon payment. That's basically what I'm working with now. All right, so the way that I do that is a little bit complicated. I buy the houses with my own money. Say I go buy 8, 9, 10 houses with my cash, and then I run out of money. I go take a line of credit from a bank that I have that's going to be like a short-term loan that I can recover my money. Then when I get enough of these houses, like I build up to the 10, I go get a big blanket mortgage like what Ms. Chambers mentioned, the cross collateral. Then I get all my money back for a long period of time. I pay off the line of credit, and I go buy a bunch more houses, and I start that like 3-step process. So I have like the short-term money, which is mine, the mid-term money, which is the line of credit, and then the long-term, which is the commercial.
Okay, what was the second part of your question?
It was for me. Yes. All right. So the reason why I'm changing my mind about going with smaller units is an example. Okay, so I have a 4plex, okay? So for whatever reason, I lose 1 tenant. Now I'm 75% occupied, you see? So it's like, what if I lose a second tenant, which is very possible, right? So now I'm 50%, you see? Like when I go bigger, it's a good chance because I know I'm going to do my homework when I'm buying a 50, 80, or 100, unit complex or whatever. So I need to lose a lot of tenants, to start kind of get worried about, how much money I'm not making because of the amount. It's just being more secured, and it's less headache for you to manage. And let's say I end up buying a 80 apartment complex, okay, 80 units. So I need one management company to take care of that for me, okay? Now, how many fourplex or duplex or whatever I need to acquire, and how much headache's gonna be, how many people I need to kind of be managing all those different, because they're not gonna be on the same area. Most likely, they could be on the same city, same town, but I'm looking different areas in the country, right? So I know when I pull the trigger on something bigger, the numbers are going to make sense, and I'm going to feel more secure, and it's going to be less headache for me. So it's return on my investment, less headache, and not being worried that if I wake up tomorrow and the two of my tenants just gave me notice they're going to leave, now I'm 50% empty. So when you have 80 or 100, let's say, you gotta lose like 10 tenants or 15 or 20 to get to the 80% that a lot of people work with, 80% of vacancy, yeah. Right? So that's one of the reasons. I don't see anything wrong. Look, I'm making money with those fourplexes, and I'm happy with it. I'm just changing my mind a little bit how to kind of get to the next level.
And plus you can have on-site management too. That's the other thing.
Yeah, so there's nothing wrong with fourplex whatsoever. So
here's a question.
For real estate agents or for people who are looking at possibly getting their real estate license, would you recommend getting a real estate license? Do you feel like it serves you well, or do you feel like it hinders you in acquiring properties?
When we created, and I pass on to somebody else, when we created our flipping business, we felt that one of us was four of us, myself, my wife, my business partner, and his fiance. We felt that one of us needed to get a real estate license because we wanted to have access to the MLS, and we wanted to be able to look at properties without having to wait for an agent. We never had a plan to actually represent our sales, after the project was done, that kind of stuff, which we did a couple times. But usually we leave that to the realtors that are specialized on those specific areas, right? I see a plus in getting a license, but it all depends on what is your goal, right? Why do you want the license? Because you can do flips, you can do a bunch of other stuff without having a license as well. It's about building team and relationships, and calling a bunch of different brokers throughout the area, and they're gonna come back to you and say, we have a property, I think it's gonna fit, it's gonna work for you, so you want to take a look at it. It's all about building relationships, but me personally, I think it's a good thing to have, but it's not something that you must have. Could be helpful, but you can get done without. That's my opinion. Anybody else?
Yeah, as a real estate agent, it's never helped me one bit. It's cost you money, and it costs you time to actually go get it. It brings a little bit of liability in. Don't worry, I'll talk loud shoes over there. It brings a little bit of liability into it, because now that you're acting as a real estate agent, you have a fiduciary duty to people, and you have a standard that you have to meet according to the association and the licensing stuff, where as an investor, you don't need to worry about that. Like, a big concern would be you find an elderly person and you go make an offer to buy their house, and you're an investor, you don't owe them any responsibility at all. Well, if they say, well, I trusted her because she was a realtor, and so I said she's licensed, she knows what she's doing, you're opening yourself up to litigation at that point, right? There's also the fact that is it Gabe? I'm trying to remember your name. I'm sorry. Aaron. Aaron is extremely smart. I can tell just from listening to him talk. So they figured out how to be an agent really fast. It's actually a job you got to learn. It's not like getting your license and all of a sudden, boom, you can just sell houses. There's a lot to it. And a professional real estate agent might be getting you a lot more for your house than you could do on your own if you're not like very, very savvy about real estate and business in general. So I would take all those things into consideration. And then the last thing I would just say is it's never helped me one time at all. I had that because it's another way that I earn income, but it's never helped me with investing.
We have a question back here.
Yeah, so I like the idea of buying multi-units in one complex or even in a neighborhood. But are you concerned about not diversifying your portfolio, or are your portfolios already diversified?
I'm not worried at all. Here's the thing: if you do your homework, okay, and it's like I don't know if I feel so comfortable with real estate that I feel like it's going to be really hard for me to make mistakes. Like I feel blessed and proud to say that all the deals that I have done with still like 40 deals, we never lost $1 in any of those deals, right? So it's kind of like, again, I'm every single day I'm trying to learn from people like this panel here, right? And everybody else. And so when you acquire knowledge, you feel like it's like I'm all in because I know it's not going to be a mistake. It's going to be the right city, the right location with the right companies surrounding universities, whatever it might be. But I know it's going to take a time because I know the type of the type of development or the type of building that I'm looking for. Okay, so it's right around the corner. It's not going to take long, but I feel like so confident that it's going to be a special deal that I have no worries whatsoever. So even though I feel like it's all in one basket, I feel like it's in 80 baskets because we're going to have 80 different tenants, or 70, whatever it might be. I'm just throwing numbers out there. It could be 50, I don't know. But, I want to do something bigger. And I think I have the experience, and when I feel is the right time, I'd rather have one unit where I can have all the control, all the stuff like I mentioned earlier, than having a bunch of smaller things all over the place that I have to think about all the time. So I personally don't have any worry, but you need to have some experience. And I have been involved with real estate for 23 years, and I feel like I have dipped my toes through everything. Like I have knowledge on rehab and structural stuff, and I'm not bad with numbers either. And I'm surrounding myself with the right people. They have the right mind, all the stuff. So it's just gathering all the information, putting it all together, and pulling the trigger. Because if I'm afraid that's not going to work, and it's all in one place, potentially I'm never going to get bigger. So.
Awesome. We have a question right here. Hi. You got to turn this up.
I just had more of a comment on the vacancy thing that you were talking about. In multifamily, it's the minimum vacancy. Like, we make sure that there's at least 5% vacancy, because if it's 100% vacancy, that means you're not charging enough rent. That's all. It's like you.
Where are yours? Where are you buying right now? I know you own a good amount of units, and what's your investing strategy?
I mostly buy mobile home parks. I think the mobile home park industry is where the self-storage industry was like about 15 years back. Try buying a self-storage unit right now. You can't, because hedge funds have pretty much covered the whole thing. The orange guys, So that's where the mobile home park industry is right now. We pretty much do what David Green is doing. Like, we find a realtor in an area. We did look at the emerging markets where it is. We did the entire analysis, and we found Indiana and Iowa to be two states, in Cedar Rapids, LaPorte, Indiana, South Bend, and South Bend's awesome, and Davenport. And we own about 168 units or spaces. And 12 caps plus. So yeah.
Hey, Bo, very quick. So even though I'm talking about some bigger goals for me, is nothing wrong with buying the $20,000, $25,000, $30,000 properties all over the place. It's just, for me personally right now, I'm looking for something else. But that's how it started. Buying those smaller properties, and I feel like I need to get elsewhere. That's just for me, but I don't see any. I would do all over again. I would buy the single-family home, fourplexes, all that stuff all over. So there's nothing wrong with that. It's just everybody's. He could be laughing at me right now because his goal is to buy like 1,000 of them, right? And I'm talking about 80, 50, whatever. So every person is different, right? So it's again, nothing wrong with the smaller units at all. Okay, and diversify. It's good to having different things. It's just every person is different. So
you got to find out what works for you, and also there's timing, right? Like if you didn't get hurt in a downturn and you started buying real estate in 2010 or 2009, right? And you're buying in California, you are like super smart, right? Because you made 200, 300 grand on every door you bought. So a lot of it's like your term. I was really dumb in 2000. Yeah, exactly. Like I wasn't ready to take advantage of it because So this is a constant evolution. You're always going to learn. You're always going to grow. A lot of people that come to these just never do anything, and if you don't do anything, you gotta, that's the whole key. It's these guys are smart, but they're not, they're not rocket science. Well, he's an engineer. I shouldn't say that, but I mean, really, like they're not telling us anything we don't already know, right? They're just doing it, and then they're like, what I've noticed about David, it's just he's just very systematic with what he does. It's so simple though, really. Like, okay, like you're such a rock star, but it's like a simple, but then again, nobody executes at that level all the time. So it's like, he's taking action and he's just implementing a simple program. He's doing it where he doesn't get stressed out, and he's able to still be a top producing real estate agent. So I think you got to find your investing model, and I mean, there's no real secret. I mean, obviously, if somebody gets Amazon that gets in like wherever there's the two places they're narrowing it down, yeah, I mean, you're going to have like a forced appreciation for sure in that market, right? If it's Indiana. What are the two markets Amazon's supposed to go to? I can't remember, but yeah, Atlanta, wherever it hits, right? Like it's going to create 50,000 jobs, which for an economy that's probably going to. The only employer left in the country in like 12 years. Yeah. So who else has questions? We want to wrap up soon so we can go home and our network. Okay, here's one for.
So outside the MLS and using agents, are you guys doing any other kind of like marketing off?
Why don't you answer that?
Direct mail and.
What I found the best, especially in the Midwest, is like Investor Carrot websites. If you just follow his tutorials, Trevor. If you guys follow Trevor, yeah, I get leads like 2 or 3 a week at least, and I'm not even doing anything with it anymore. I'm not even. So it's like those are just super solid. I mean, and then Yellow Letters Complete. I mean, if you those two things and build a list of wholesalers, it's not really rocket science. But yeah, I'm a huge fan of Investor Carrot.
I have a question. For investors, I know investors can do things that realtors can't. And I've been very lucky finding a lot of places, but I got burnt. So how do you find a real estate lawyer or advisor? I've been finding properties with no mortgages on them. I just recently let one go in San Francisco. Somebody was losing it because I had got burnt before then. I was a little nervous. It was a guy losing his house. It was going to the steps like today. And I rushed him to Chase. I paid that $16,500, and we both was tired because we was on the phone for like 3 hours because it was the last day. So we didn't know if they stopped it until the next morning. I get there, his son flew in, and he made a big deal out of it. His dad was losing it. He wasn't getting nothing. And I was offering him $100,000, so I lost my $16,500 now. So I'm a little nervous about making the deals. Like people have been calling me. Like I just lost one in the city because I was a little nervous. I just lost $16,500. A lady was having reverse mortgage. I think they lost their property May the 2nd. So I'm a little nervous. I need like some advice or something, a real estate lawyer, so I can ask these questions about that $65,000. God is good. I saved him from losing his house, but I lost my $16,500. The son came in and made a big deal out of the whole thing.
So I have an awesome lawyer. I have an awesome lawyer that I don't have a problem sharing. I personally think he's awesome because every single deal that we do, he goes through him first to make sure everything's in place. And he's located in Oakland. I'm more than happy to share his information with you. I have trusted him since we started our flipping business. That's the lawyer that we have been using, and apparently he's the best one in Oakland. So we love working with him, and he's very responsive, and he knows everything there is to know. To kind of how to structure documents and to protect yourself, all that kind of stuff.
What's his name?
Brian Ripley.
Yeah, let's give it out in a second. Let's just finish the questions, and we're going to give all the contacts.
Yeah. Hi, I have a bit of it's more of a general question, and I came in a bit late, so I apologize if you guys covered this in your intro. But when did you guys feel it was ready to go full time in real estate? And do you have any concerns about anyone going full time this late in the cycle?
some people quit their jobs because of me, so I don't want to say anything about
So
it.
I'm just going to say something real quick because that's what I did about a year ago. Now, I'm not saying it's the smartest thing in the world to do. It was a situation and timing for me in terms of why I did it. But personally, I would say no reason to go full-time in it until you have a good built up your real estate portfolio. You can do a lot of this stuff without being full-time in real estate. I think most people up here, a lot of the people up here have other jobs and are doing other things and they're still killing it. So that's just my 2 cents.
I do it full time, but I can tell you that at any given time, there's micro markets all around the country. So when you say you're too late in the game, that may be a sentiment here or in a certain market, but even in the best of times, there's going to be markets that are on a downturn because of a local economic issue. Even in the worst of times, there may be some economic development that's going on somewhere. So, it's always a good time. Not to leave your job, but it's always a good time.
If you buy for cash flow, I mean, it depends on your investing strategy. All right, what do you do for a day job?
I work in private wealth management.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you take like a green style approach where, you rack up your W-2 income, you're bankable, you're not self-employed and running losses, it's a lot easier to get bank loans to begin with. Build that cash flow up until you're 100%, right? If you're making 20 grand a month, whatever you need to survive, to cover your bills and stuff, build it up with your passive income like Green did, and then you don't need a job. He chose to keep going, but he decided to become a real estate agent. Now he's self-employed, but now he'll have income to because that's the one thing I see a lot of investors do. They go from being W-2'd and they own a few rentals and they go, I'm going to do this full time, and then and they want to buy rentals. Now they can't get a bank loan, so it kind of F's them. So yeah, you got to think those things. I would say depending on your portfolio right now and your if you got a couple million in the bank, then feel free to do it. But look at that and make an informed decision. And I think we're going to wrap this up right now just so we can network. Everybody wants, we've been asked for your contact information. I know Kent's got a bunch of cards and flyers here. And then can you give your attorney's contact information, your contact information, how to follow you on Facebook or whatever you want, to say hi, your email. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll give you the his phone number and email, all this stuff later. And well, if someone here running into a project that you have let's say foundation problems or whatever, don't run away, because sometimes you might be running away if you're flipping the house, you're running away from money, because a lot of people say, I don't want to touch, I don't want to do anything with the foundation. And sometimes that's actually where all the profit is going to be, by fixing that foundation. And after that might not be much to get done with that particular property. So, and I'm going to put my cards in here. So if you guys have any questions about foundation work, because you have people here that has a lot more knowledge in rentals, that kind of stuff. But anyway, I appreciate your time. And if you want to talk to me about whatever, just come talk to me afterward.
For me, so feel free to come grab me afterwards. Happy to give out some cards. I'm also on Bigger Pockets, Ryan McCaskey on Bigger Pockets. Pretty easy to find me there. One other thing we didn't mention, Ray and I, we've been doing a lot of meeting people here and people at other events that are looking to invest out of state, and those that are doing Indianapolis in particular. We've probably, 10, 12, 15 people that we've met that are doing that. And we've been doing a lot of helping people and sharing contacts, and there's no money involved. It's just helping a group of people learn how to invest out of state. So feel free to reach out.
And tell them what you wanted to start the local.
Yeah. So actually, and Bo and I have also been talking about doing essentially a spin-off of this on folks that are looking at doing out of state. And trying to find some time where maybe you can get into a little bit more of the details, share some of the deals you've been doing, what they look like, answering some questions. So if you guys are interested in something like that, in addition to all the great content that we get at this, definitely let us know. We've been just trying to decide if it's something that we know there are going to be enough people that are interested, and then find out a good time to do it.
And I think that'll be more like a lunch, like an informal, like where we could just talk.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to do like these panels. I didn't know what we were going to do, and it's hard to everybody wants to get their message out, but we gotta ask enough questions. So anyway, thank you.
Yeah, basically same thing Ryan said. If you guys need any help understanding the Indianapolis market or having contacts out there, we're happy to expand your network of not just people on the ground, but other investors that are also working in the same area.
My contact on social media is pretty much David Green 24 at everything. So there's an E at the end of Green, so it's David Green with an E at the end, 24. That's how you find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. It's all the same. And then I also run a blog, greenincome.com. Green, again, has that E at the end. That's just kind of a place where I post the podcasts that I've been interviewed on and blog articles that I write. And eventually I'll catch up to putting the deals I'm actually doing on the blog. I have a couple I need to update. We're just real busy right now. But if you guys want to follow me, that's probably the easiest way. And then I'm also on Bigger Pockets. I would recommend everybody here, if you're not subscribing to the Bigger Pockets podcast right now, go on your phone, subscribe to that, and listen to it when you're driving around. It's just like having us there every single day. It's a different investor every week talking about what they did, how they put it together, how they overcame the same things you're overcoming, how they outsmarted their problems. And the more I listen to it, the smarter I get, because I learn how other people see problems and like the way that they take them on and they overcome it. And then I start applying that in my own situation. So I've just surrounded myself with real estate. I think about it all the time. I talk to people about it all the time. I'm learning about it all the time. And then my brain just kind of adapts to the problems I'm having, and I come up with these solutions. So I feel confident if you guys do the same thing, you'll have similar results.
Thank you.
I just want to say something real quick. I got a pile of business cards here. Chances are, if you're thinking about a major market, I probably looked at it or studied it. So I'm very approachable. Feel free to shoot me an email, call me or text me or something like that, and I'd be happy to, share my opinion, which may or may not mean anything. But if you need any help with anything, I'm always available to help. So just feel free. The cards are right here.
Okay, before we break, we didn't do any haves, wants, or needs. I'll let anybody have anything. Do you have any events in Sacramento going on? How do we follow you on? I see you guys doing a lot of stuff. What do you guys have a monthly meetup?
Monthly meetups are third Wednesday of the month, which is usually your meetup.
No, mine just varies.
Varies, okay.
Mine varies.
2 or 3 times we met at like third Wednesday of the month,
Oh.
so like mine and yours are the same time.
Okay.
I don't get to network at my own meetup, so this is awesome. So third Wednesday of the month, SacramentoRealEstateClub.com. Please come. I need your money.
Hey, Bo. Can I?
Kenton, get up here.
So next week we have a networking events here of Mixer. So for all of you guys, and the best part is going to be free food, free beer, and free wine because we got a sponsors. It's a Capital One. So please come next week. It's going to be at downtown here.
At the new.
Correct.
Yeah, grab his card if you want to go. What's the networking event about?
It's going to be majority networking event that you guys can talk, and then there will be a guy that specializes in 1031 exchange. Going to talk about 1031 exchange. There's not going to any sales pitches. It's about educations and networking. It's going to be next Thursday.
Oh, perfect, thank you. Girls Gone Wild. We got Sanjay. I'm sorry, wrong one.
InvestorsGoneWild.com. I'm starting a meetup group in Dublin that will start July 3rd week of Wednesday. It will be on Meetup. It will be in Holiday Inn in Dublin. Please do come visit us. I will teach you all the tips and techniques about how I bought 23 homes sitting in my California home in Detroit with the entire crew, and how I'm flipping houses sitting in my bedroom on my mobile without ever being on site, and very complex rehab I've been doing. How am I Uberizing the fix and flip industry? So you'll get to learn all of that. Plus you'll have nice, wonderful speakers come there. So it'll be a party, InvestorsGoneWild.com. Watch out for that on the meetup.
Anybody else? Oh, did you want to go? Did you guys return? Oh, okay. Cynthia, of course, wants to go.
If anyone needs their information, the panels or anyone else here, just please email Bo. Or if you email me, if you email Bo, he's not going to get back to you. But it'd be Cynthia at Thrive, THRIVERE. What is it? Thriveria. REIA.com. Cynthia at thriveria.com. So yeah, if you need someone's information, like, oh my God, there was this like really hot guy there and he like was a realtor, just email me and then I'll get back to you.
You're not talking about David Green. And anyways, I'll just plug myself. My day job, I lend money. If you guys need money, we do fix and flip lending. And we're really good at, I think Jake, oh, he left. He's the guy that plugged me. I did a couple loans for him, so he can verify it. But anyways, yeah, we have good rates and pricing, and I'd like to win some of your business, if possible. And then I buy in Indiana as well, and I haven't been buying as much lately, but I actually have a clarity on how to execute a little bit better, and I've taken a lot of the wisdom I've heard from David, especially because I read his book, and the core four is like huge. So it's just like you learn from your peers, guys, to keep going. And we had coffee a couple weeks ago. He told me a story how he scaled his business in what was it, like 3 years. I mean, it's unbelievable what he did. So there's a lot of value around everybody in here, guys. You got to just kind of like get in there, get to know people, and you're going to learn something or share something that you know.
Hey, Bo, can I
Sure, go ahead.
talk about the Oakland deal quick?
Yeah.
All right. So myself and my business partner, we closing on a deal tomorrow in Oakland. It's we're gonna be adding six apartments to the existing building. It's 2-story building right now, so it's gonna be 12 new apartments in there. And the lower level is gonna be a restaurant, a cafe, and we trying to decide what the third space is gonna be. So we have raised almost 100% of all the money that we need, but we're still looking for investors. So if any of you guys are interested, come talk to me. I can give you guys some more information about that particular deal. So we might have just a couple little spots left because it's been very successful right now. So anyway, that's it. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.